Dear Brisbane Lions, over the past week since we recorded a very distressing loss against the GWS Giants on Anzac Day, I've had a good hard think about where this club's at right now, where it's going to be in the future, how it's going to get to where it needs to be in the future. And unlike a lot of people in social media and other online outlets, I don't want to sack the coach or any of the coaches. But I reckon the coaches we've got need to fire up a little bit and deliver some of the all-time great speeches like the following.
At least do something! Do! Don't think, Nick! Don't hope! Do! At least you can come up and say, I did this! Or I shivered it! Or I played on! At least I did something!
We said before the match 100 minutes, at half-time 60, and now it's only 25! We've come too far to let it slip now. That is not to say we go defensive, though. We're still keeping this bloody pressure up as never been kept up before. And let's keep this pressure on by long kicks straight up the guts. 25 minutes to go, boys. I'm extraordinarily proud of you. But I want you to make me the proudest coach in league history. And I want this crowd to be proud of every last one of you.
Talk your damn head off. Get across and use your bloody body. Look at that word there. Bloody aggressive. How many years have been aggressive so far? Kevin, fair dinkum, mate. You've got to put your boot into the ball. You're too slow to do all this finessing. Bloody back pocket plumber. That's what I want. You see the bloody straight, get your boot to the damn thing. Head towards goal.
Come on. Okay, just listen a sec. Okay, last bit of that quarter was pretty good. They really stirred it up to us. You came back and really used the ball well in the end. And I think that's the essence, to actually use the ball well. Because all game, really, they're just floating around. They're just floating around, trying to get kicks on the rebound. But, I mean, we've just got to work a little bit harder in that forward 50 to keep the ball in there. The ground level players have got to work their guts out to get the ball and leave it in the area. We're just being able to run the ball out of our attacking 50 just a little bit too easily.
The way we've been able to run it around and just use the pressure, use the ball, we've got to be smart in the forward line. Fellas, you've been an absolute credit to the jump up again. Let's go again. But we don't want to just be good. We just don't want to be competitive. Finish it up. It's just one of the greatest opportunities you're ever going to have. Listen, you've got to believe you can win it. If you do believe you can win it, we can't lose it. Let's go!
Don't and ever let any club or player dominate you at a ball, at a stoppage, in the air or on the ground. That is the essence of simple, bloody, basic football. Now let's get it.
Mattingly! I thought I told you to trim those sideburns! Go home! You're off the team for good!
I don't know about you guys. Like, if I see one bloke walk out of here, getting a pat in the back from people out there for a good effort, I'll spew up!
So, Brisbane Lions, now that you've heard that, and I know you're listening, what do you reckon? What do you reckon? Is it time to fire up? Is it time for the coaches to get angry? Is it time for the coaches to inspire the boys to make us the proudest supporters in the land? Hit that intro music now. All right, well, welcome to round 8, and we're here tonight with Al McGovern and Neil Butler to have a bit of a chat about the selection and a few other issues facing the Brisbane Lions and the AFL in general. And let's get into it. So, good evening, Al.
It's been their one wood, hasn't it? They've been found wanting. McGovern, too good there.
Hey, mate. How you doing this week?
Yeah, good, mate. How's your week been?
Bit chaotic, footy aside, but back on track now, just in time for the weekend, so that's good.
No worries, that's good. And Neil, how are you travelling this week, mate?
Oh, excellent. For those who listened to me 3 weeks ago, they go, what on earth's happened to him? I've got COVID, or have had it this week. So I'm doing my very best Mark Knopfler imitation at the minute.
Got the dreaded spicy flu, and Mark Knopfler had some pretty dulcet tones. So
he does, doesn't he?
Nothing wrong with that. But can you play guitar like Mark Knopfler?
I can play guitar like a ring in a bell. I know that was Johnny B. Good, wasn't it?
Chuck Berry.
That's it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll get into it with the selection. I guess. Been a pretty interesting week at Brisbane Lions Central, and we have made some changes.
Yeah, a few changes more than I was anticipating, to be honest.
So I'll go into the changes for both us and the Suns.
Yep.
So for us, the ins are Big O, as expected. And the next two are guys that we both, Al and myself, flagged last week as potential ins, and that's Harry Sharp and Bruce Reville.
Yeah.
And going out of the team, Darcy Fort, Calamachi, and Jimmy Tunstall, who I think is a bit hard done by. Calamachi was injured, of course. They say it's just a 1 week hamstring, but we all know hamstrings take longer than a week, and Cal has a history of soft tissues.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a 1 week hamstring before.
Well, we saw
Or did they in fact say that's 1 week hamstring?
We saw a 5-day hamstring with Connor Rosey this week, which was a bit of an interesting one.
Yep.
And for the Suns, the ins are Ethan Reid, who I don't know a lot about. Ben Long, who's sort of been a bit of a journeyman, former St Kilda player. Good to see him get a game, though. He's a pretty honest-looking sort of guy. And the outs are Sam Day, who's another one of those honest sort of guys, and Bailey Humphrey, who the commentators absolutely loved last year and couldn't stop mentioning his name every time he played a game, despite the fact that he didn't really do a great deal. So, yeah, all right. So what do you guys...
Has he fallen out of favour this season, has he, Bailey Humphrey? I haven't been tracking. But they were very obsessed with him last year.
Yeah, I think he's been rested, and and Sam Day's been omitted.
Yep. Okay.
So, yeah, what are your thoughts on our changes and theirs, guys?
What do you reckon, Neil?
Well, I think Oscar McInerney was always going to happen. I'm surprised, I'm a long way away from the selection table, but I thought they might have gone one more. I think that Darcy Gardner is skating on thin ice at the moment. I would have liked to have seen Logan Morris have a run.
Yeah.
Home ground, doesn't have to travel first game, that kind of thing. But the only question that does pop into my head about our selections is I did hear them talking about Bruce Reville the other day as distinct from Bruce Reville. So we're going to have to work that one out fairly soon.
Yes, and the commentators on the VFL sometimes refer to him as Bruce Rebel with a B.
Yeah, well, he'll no doubt be known as the sandwich maker, being B Reville.
Yes, well,
yeah, true.
Who doesn't love a jaffle though? Let's face it.
That's it. But I think James Tunstall is always going to be, for the time being anyway, that number 23, isn't he? He's the one that's sort of on the fringe, sometimes comes in, sometimes goes out, and sometimes I think they drop them back to the twos just to give them a run and get some confidence up.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed to see that he was omitted, but at the same time, wasn't really surprised. Like you said, we have a habit of, last man out, first man in kind of situation. So I'm not surprised that he was dropped. I was also surprised that McCarthy wasn't actually injured, because I remember there was kind of a bit of an uncertainty over the last game, like how it finished up, because he chucked a jumper on and he maybe didn't finish the game out. But apparently he's playing this week. I was expecting to see him out.
He looked a bit proppy early on in the game. I think I brought that up in our game review, and I had that in my notes from the game as well. But then he came back on and kicked that miraculous goal, and I was like, wow, what's going on here?
Yeah, but I think he was I don't think he finished the actual game, because he was one of the blokes that had the jumpers on, like Cal did when he got his injury and didn't finish the game. There was two of them walking around, and McCarthy was the other one. He had the full jumper on and everything when they were walking around, shaking all the hands. So yeah, I don't know if there's something more to that or not.
Well, maybe because the game was well and truly shot. He may have been sort of almost managed in that last little while, and you weren't going to think that in that weather in Canberra in the wet without an extra jumper on. I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, well, true.
Let's face it, by the end of the game, I was also wearing a jumper and heading to bed and switching off my TV as well. So, yeah, very, very, very disappointing end to the game. And my own behaviour was pretty disappointing. My neighbours came across a new side of me and they didn't like it.
Oh, wow, okay. We haven't had too many of those losses in recent memory.
No. I think I've had a bit more of a think about it, and I know the loss to the Suns last year at whatever their stadium was called at the time was a bad one, but I don't think we played as badly in that game as what we did against the Giants. I think really even the Hawthorn game, I thought we still sort of gave ourselves enough chances, but I think this goes back to the Port Adelaide game in round one last year for the two worst of the last 2 years, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Well, being the eternal optimist, I can remember being at the ground that people incorrectly call Princess Park in 2001. It was round 8. Similar time of the season, we played against Carlton. And I remember coming out of that ground and saying to my son, I have never seen a Lions jumper, Fitzroy or Brisbane, put in less of an effort. Insipid was being kind. The following week, they lost by a goal, and the next 16 games they won, the 16th of which was the 2001 grand final. So that season, we were 4-5 after 9. If we beat beat Gold Coast and then win again next week, we'll be 4-5. There's the eternal optimist in me coming through.
Yeah, I also was at that game at Prince's Park. Multiple princes, not one princess.
And you didn't bother to come up and say good day. I think that's pretty rude, if I can be honest.
Yeah, well, you look. I'll be honest. You were hobnobbing it up on Sir Robert Menzies' drive-through that he used to park his Rolls Royce on, whereas I was kind of hiding down near the TAB in the bar, hoping not to get noticed by any Carlton supporters.
Ash of the People, that's his name.
Yeah, well, actually, it's funny because back in the mid-90s, I used to go to all the Fitzroy games there, and I was actually the early 90s because by the mid-90s, we were playing at the Whitten or the Western Oval as it was in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And I reckon I bumped into at least 4 or 5 Fitzroy players in the TAB or at the bar who had played reserves that morning and couldn't be bothered watching the seniors because it wasn't pretty.
Jeez.
No.
Those are dark days.
But
yeah.
In terms of the Gold Coast ins and outs, you speak of Ethan Reid, and you're not overly familiar with his work. He's one of the 4 guys that joined the Suns last year from the Suns Academy, along with Walter, Rogers, and Graham. So he's played games. Comes out of Palm Beach, Currumbin. A mobile and skillful ruckman. This sounds a lot like I'm reading it, doesn't it? And he was part of the Gold Coast Suns Academy and then worked through with the Allies as well. So was an All-Australian last year. They will know each other because they've played in the Allies, some of these guys. So there you go.
Yeah. What kind of position player did you say he is?
A mobile and skillful ruckman.
Right, okay. Interesting.
If you're lining it up, Ethan Reid in for Sam Day, I guess is how it would read.
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing all those guys on draft night. And I think it might have been the 4th of the guys from Palm Beach, Currumbin, who didn't have a polo shirt. He was just there having a few waters with his mates, and they called his name out. And he suddenly, a couple of guys had to take their shirts off to see which one fit him.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah. But I remember, is it Jed Walter? Is that his first name?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember when he was called out, and I made a comment on Facebook to a couple of friends, like, he is an absolute beast of a man, and he's like Jack Payne, like in the size of him, and he was only, he's only 18, obviously.
Yep.
I've heard some good and bad things about the games he's played this year. A few reports that he has had some really big moments where he's used his big size and whatever, but then other times where He's obviously done what 18-year-olds do when they hit the big time and had some quiet moments.
Yeah, of course.
Hopefully,
I'm looking at his season stats. He's played 3 games. He's averaged 4.7 disposals, 2.7 kicks, so presumably 2 handballs per game, 1 goal per game, 1 mark per game, and in the 3 games he's had 1 tackle. So still learning his craft, I think. He's elite at goal accuracy because he's kicked 3 out of his 4 shots at goal.
Oh, well, There you go. That's better than most of our blokes at the moment. Let's be real here. Yeah, but Bailey Humphrey, as we sort of were saying, like he was a guy that last year, the commentators in particular, and some of the presenters on SEN when I was still vaguely listening to it, were all over him. He was the next big thing. He was going to be the big superstar. I chucked him into my fantasy team last year based on getting caught up with the big wave of publicity he was getting, and that was a bit of a failure. And doesn't seem to be. I don't seem to be hearing much about him this year. So obviously their midfield is on fire with their other guys they've got anyway.
There's a lot of talent straight across the board, and that's an exciting thing for them, is they have so much young talent that hasn't reached their potential yet as well. So and we're kind of the same. They're a little bit further behind in their development, but they're a similar story to us, I guess. And a lot of people are expecting them to make the 8 this year. Don't know if I believe that, but I think they'll certainly do pretty well and probably get the closest they've ever been this year.
Yeah, I think with the Gold Coast, you have to see some evidence of them getting there first before you can get confident about them doing it again.
Oh, yeah.
Because the body of work says that how many times have they gotten close and then, fallen down at the last hurdle or two?
Yeah, well, I think 12th is the highest they've ever finished.
Yeah.
And that was the year Gary Ablett was flying until he smashed his shoulder.
Yeah, I think, wasn't it? Oh, no, it was Liam Picken from the Bulldogs hit him in the shoulder or something, if I recall. And
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember thinking that year, well, there was a point where I was thinking both Queensland teams are going to be in the 8.
Mm.
And, well, under various circumstances, that neither team ended up making it.
No.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know. I feel like they kind of they didn't really squander that time, I guess, when they had Gary Ablett. But they had a lot of other good guys as well, but they all ended up leaving them. So, like May and Lynch and all the dudes that went to Richmond, they lost like 3 guys to Richmond.
Yeah, Prestia, Lynch.
What's his name?
Josh Caddy.
Caddy.
Yeah.
That's right.
Another one of those perennial journeymen.
Yep.
Gets around.
And then they all went to Richmond and got flags with Richmond.
Yeah. I still remember that thing with Mitch Robinson where he had that blue with Tom Lynch for just taking the money and going to a team that was contending. I mean, I thought it was pretty funny. I thought, oh, well, here's a bloke saying what he feels. But you know what? Wouldn't you guys go to a contending team if you're offered the right amount of money and you had a chance at success?
I don't know. I'm a pretty loyal bloke. I think I'm the kind of guy that would have stayed at the club the whole way through, probably had no success. And a lot of people would look back on you as a waste of your career, but I wouldn't feel like it's a waste when you stay loyal to the club, as long as they're good to you as well. Like, you don't want to hang around just for the sake of it if they're not treating you well. But
yeah,
I think there's a lot of the older guys for the Suns kind of stuck around. I mean, what's their it's not their captain anymore. Swallow was the one I was thinking of. Yeah, he's kind of he was an inaugural Sunner, wasn't he? He's the only one left, I think.
He was a first round draft pick. I think, was he picked 1? Neil, you might know.
Not actually picked 1.
No, but he was certainly, I think, their first draft pick.
Yeah, he was their first big pick, and he's still there. So that's definitely loyalty.
Yeah, and I mean, Tuke Miller stuck around for a fair while now.
True.
To the detriment of us in Q clashes, but hey, according to the media, he's the good guy and Zorko's not, which we all know is not true.
I caught I think it was a YouTube ad a couple of hours ago that was pumping up the Q Clash, just trying to get the average person interested in going to it. And they showed a bunch of promotional material for a bunch of Lions players, and then every time they showed a Suns player, it was Tuke Miller. They only showed Tuke Miller in various shots in various games.
He's probably the only one they know, let's face it.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Like, they're still trying to work out who Damien Hardwick is. They probably think he's some guy who played for the Newtown Jets in the old New South Wales Rugby League.
He's the water boy, isn't he?
Oh, he slices the oranges like your mate whose name we won't mention.
Yeah, inside joke.
Yeah.
I'm well out of it.
That's one we'll have to tell you off air, Neil.
Yeah, we'll have to fill you in a bit later on that one. You'll get a good laugh out of that.
Again, I've done my research while you guys have been chatting. He was, in fact, pick number 1 in 2010 was David Taylor.
I didn't know he was the number 1 pick. I knew he was a high pick.
I beg your pardon. I'll read again. I'm reading this, folks. The former skipper, one of the longest-serving Suns in history, after being taken with the club's first ever draft selection at pick 1 in 2010.
There you go.
Wow.
So
you heard it first here, folks.
That was the first compromise draft that the Eagles fans whinge about perennially because they were the wooden spooners that year and didn't get pick 1.
Yep.
But 5 years later, they played in a grand final, and 3 years after that, they won one. So, hey, I love you guys, but shut up.
I think they did well enough.
Yeah, you did. You didn't do too badly out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So Neil flagged, well, I did as well at the start, Darcy Gardner, and where we think he's at. And I think we've sort of talked about him a little bit. I pumped him up early in the season. I thought he was doing okay. But where do we think he's at now? Do we think the forward experiment has run its race?
I definitely think the experiment has, but whether or not we can kind of shift some guys around and keep them in the team, that's another question. But I think the forward experiment's definitely gone. But would you drop Payne and would you keep him in, or would you just drop Gardner? I'm not sure. I need to see a bit more from both of them, to be honest, because Payne's been pretty quiet last couple of weeks. Well, this whole season, really.
Yeah.
I think the thing that Payne has going for him ahead of Gardner is that if they're both going through form slumps, Jack Payne doesn't get any smaller. And when you've got, if you've got a third tall back, then Payne and Andrews clearly are your top 1 and 2, big guy. The third tall at the back is where I think Gardner belongs, but it's going to have a pretty hard task getting the boy Ryan Lester out, who is career best at the minute.
Yeah, he's definitely not doing better than Lester.
So I don't think
I wouldn't drop Lester at all.
Yeah.
So I've got a theory, and this is a little bit left field, maybe.
Ooh, okay.
Unlike you.
Maybe. I mean, natural left-hander, natural left-footer, but natural left-handed golfer, but a right-handed cricketer. Go figure, right? So I have that unusual distinction. So my unusual and left field suggestion is perhaps Gardner is the ideal sub. He can play back. We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the worst forward I've ever seen. He's clearly not the best.
Look, I like it more than Fort as the sub.
Yeah. Well,
and I like it more than Lyons as the sub.
The only time I liked Fort as the sub was the week he wasn't, when we played against Geelong a fortnight ago.
Yeah, that was the kind of rare instance where it would have been a perfect idea.
Yeah.
Not to be.
But, Gardner, he has durability. He can play sort of different areas. I don't know how he'd go in the midfield, but that wouldn't matter, because if we lost a mid and he was a sub, we can shuffle like McCarthy, Cameron, Zorko, Answorth, Wilmot, all can go either into the midfield or onto a wing, and then Jared Berry can go into the midfield if one of those guys goes onto a wing. You know what I mean? Like, midfielders are a dime a dozen. That's a cliche, I know, but Gardner can go down back. I mean, wouldn't that placate everyone when they look at that and say, well, hey, they've actually made some moves. They've moved the magnets around, and people can stop whinging about it.
I don't mind it. I think it's certainly it makes more sense than some of the options that we've had this season. like not even bringing Tunstall in. What was that? 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, didn't even get on the ground.
Yeah.
That was that against Melbourne?
Yeah, I think so. It was one of the ones we won, and then they just didn't think there was any point. But
That's right.
there's a bit of stuff around for Tunstall, but yeah, you'd think that. Yeah, I don't mind it. I mean, we've had some shocking options this season, like I said before. So yeah, I'd be happy with that. And we've already dropped Tunstall, so it's not an option. There's not an obvious option of who will be the sub this week, I don't think.
And it's not something that the general average supporter is going to go, hey, let's just make Gardner our sub this week. But when you sort of think about it, like you've said, like it's not the worst idea.
No, it's definitely not.
Yeah.
And you're right. I don't think many people would think that. They were definitely a bit left field when I was having a think about it. But no, I don't mind it, actually.
Got any thoughts on that, Neil?
Yeah, I think I can see where you're coming from. I guess the question in my mind is, are you better off saying, well, we know what he can do. Who can we bring up from the reserves who could do with a quarter or two just to test them out at that level, if you know what I mean? So, Brucey Reville or Reville or Breville or Toastmaster or whatever we're going to call him, you would expect him to start in the match, not be the sub, given the song and dance that's happened during the week. But bringing someone in like that who, just give him a quarter or two, and worst case, he's on at the 3-minute mark of the first quarter. I think either would work. But, that's why you get paid the big dollars, Ash, is to field ideas.
I do not get paid any sort of dollars for this. And actually, I want to bring up something on that too. So this is just going on a bit of a tangent and a bit of a rant.
Sure.
So, Al, you're not a member anymore. Neil, you are. So you would have gotten an email today from the club advertising the TAB.
Yes, I did see that.
I was not impressed with that myself. I have said many, many, many times, I do not have a problem with gambling. I have put bets on a number of times myself. No issue with that at all. I have a problem with advertising gambling.
Yeah.
And I have a problem with the football club basically almost forcing it down our throats. I have no issue with when they send me emails saying, do you want to buy a raffle ticket to win this home from one of our sponsors? Or if you want to buy a Hyundai, head down to this dealership and speak to this lady. Who else sponsors us these days? If you want to get a delivery, call XL Express.
I don't think they're a sponsor anymore. I think Caltex took their spot.
Yeah, if you want to buy fuel, go to Caltex, or in Victoria, they're all Ampols now.
No, actually, they're a separate company.
Oh, are they? Well, a lot of the stores got rebadged as Ampol.
Yes. So what happened was, speaking of going off at a tangent,
that's what we do here.
Caltex, as it was part owned by Chevron in America, and also Ampol, the company that's behind Ampol, and they were using the Caltex brand under license.
Okay.
And then Caltex, as they are now, said to the company that is now Ampol, you've got 2 years to get out of the name of Caltex because we're taking it back. We want to use it ourselves. Because they bought out a company called Puma. And and Puma is a conglomerate of a number of other organisations, Gull and Matilda and others from years ago. So, in fact, because they owned the brand, and they basically said to Ampol, go and make all your other sites Ampol, and then we can get our brand back. So, yeah, they're two totally separate companies. That's why you don't see Caltexes in Victoria.
Yeah,
Puma,
right.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
I thought that one of the other clubs was sponsored by Ampol, like Essendon or something.
Yeah, I did see it on another jumper the other day.
Yeah.
I think it might be Essendon.
No, I think Essendon's Amart, which has got a very similar logo, but it could be Ampol.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, look, so back to my rant. I have no issue with all those sort of things.
Might just educate as well.
Look, I like to learn new things. I did say that to someone who was... I'll bring up another little rant in a minute.
Go for it.
It's Carlton Football Club. I just Googled it. Carlton sponsored by Ampol.
There you go. Yeah, so like, I just don't feel like we need to be. There's so much football media and stuff from Clubland, for example, that just really pushes the gambling stuff down our throats. Pretty much every footy podcast, even the Kick-On's one that you hear occasionally because it's not on every week anymore.
Yeah.
They're advertising Tab Touch on their show. It's just, yeah, look, I think it's too much. I didn't appreciate getting that email from the club. And I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking that.
I was pretty happy when we parted ways with Ned's, and I was like, oh, yes, great. That'll give us, room for another big sponsor, and then we got Tab straight away. So I was like, oh, right.
I think there are people who struggle with gambling, and I understand that, and the appropriate advertising tags now. I guess the bigger concern for me is it probably was 2 years ago. I was talking to a young kid, probably 13 or 14, the son of somebody that I knew, sort of thing. And I said to him, who's going to win the footy? And he came back and said, whoever it was, Carlton Planks and Kilda, let's say, I think Carlton will. And so what makes you think that? And he said they're paying $1.60 rather than $2.30 like St Kilda.
Mm.
Yeah, so I've experienced that from my son as well. He's 15 now, but I reckon probably 3 or 4 years ago, he was saying the same sort of things to me. Or he'd say, he watched the front bar and say, oh, Dad, did you get on with Mick's multi, Mick Malloy's multi, or one of the Nathan Brown multis that he spruiks at halftime in the games? I was like, no, of course not.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing even seeing that stuff?
Yeah,
it's just everywhere at the moment. It has been for a long time, really. But it seems like it's getting more egregious as the years go on.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the footy clubs have dropped their pokies or whatever from their gaming venues and that sort of thing. I was at a Windy Hill the other day, and look, I realise Windy Hill's kind of not really Essendon's place now, but they still have their club venue with the bistro and that sort of thing there, and they still have pokies there. And I was actually working on a job just across the road, and I was like, oh wow, like they still need to have the pokies now? Like really? It's 2024.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of functions at the social club there for a thing called the AFL Premiership Players Association, and walking in, they rudely say things like, if you go to Adelaide, the local time is 1987. It's a bit like that when you walk through the front door of that place. The whole it's as though Windy Hill is still an AFL/VFL venue. It's a walk back in time, and things like poker machines. Really, come on.
Yeah, and look, I've been guilty of putting $5 into the pokies here and there over my life if I've been out for dinner or something. I haven't done it for a very long time, simply because you go to, so Neil would know a pretty big venue close to where I live on the highway in the northern suburbs of Geelong. That used to be an old pub full of bikies and brawlers and pool players. That is now a half buffet restaurant and half pokey venue. Now,
you could almost say it's the gateway to our town, couldn't you?
You could say that, yeah. And the sun used to go down there a fair bit in previous years.
In the old days, didn't it?
Yeah, and I've been in there, and I've had meetings of people in. There's like a little area at the edge of the pokey room where you can sit down and have a coffee and a sandwich or whatever from that little sort of cafe bar section. And I've been sitting there having a coffee while having a meeting with people for various different reasons, and seen on what appears to be pension day, people pouring 50 after 50 after 50, and I'm talking bills, not coins, into these machines, and then basically turning their pockets out, and there's nothing left. And and it's disheartening to see that this is happening to people. And look, I know it's like any other addiction. I've never had a drug addiction, or I've never smoked, never been an alcoholic, but I've seen the effects of what those things do to people, and gambling is right up there with it, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely. Agreed.
Yeah, all right. So look, I guess we'll just get back onto, I won't say happier things, because Jared Lyons, where do we think he's at?
If Neil gets injured or suspended, he comes in. If he doesn't, then he doesn't.
Yep.
For a minute there, I thought you were talking about me. Different Neil. You mean? I'm thinking,
lucky Neil.
What have I done wrong?
Well, you're quite a bit taller than Lockie Neal there, mate. So,
and my tattoos are so much nicer. Brackets. I haven't got any closed brackets. Yeah, I think. I think when you get to players like, Ryan Lester last year and Jared Lyons, who have got lots and lots of experience. There's a lot to be said for them playing in the reserves because you're working through with and bringing those kids through. But I think you almost identify a player in the seniors, in this case, Lockie Neal, or in the case of Ryan Lester, probably Daniel Rich or Darcy Gardner when he first got injured. You almost identify the player that if that person is injured, walk up start. If they're not, you're in the reserves. And I think that's where Jared's up to.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you think that's it's worth his while to stick around for another year or two if that's going to be the case, or?
Well, I mean, is he getting any offers from any other clubs? If he's not, then that's want to hang on.
Yeah, we don't know, obviously, but does the club hang on? Because the club's been sort of ruthless a little bit at delisting time with some guys that we thought probably could have stayed on the list, but then. Yeah. With other guys we thought were going to get delisted, they've kept them on or they've rookied them and done it that way. So, but the other thing there, and look, I know Lyons is the backup for Lockie Neal, not Neil Butler. But do we get to a point at some stage this season where we say, look, he's not a walk-up start. He's probably on okay money. I don't know if he's on $1 million a season per se, but can we better place that money and a list spot with someone younger who has a bit more of a long-term future?
I think the answer is definitely yes, and I think there's a lot of guys that should be getting games over him. Like I'd like to see more of. We've had a few injuries in the last couple of weeks, so we are starting to see more of the guys that we. I thought at the beginning of the season should be getting games like Lohman, Tunstall. Sharp's coming in this weekend. Bruce Reville's debuting. So a lot of these guys are starting to get turns now, but it's hard to see us needing Lions like towards the end of the year or even next year. So I don't know what his contract status is. I don't know how long he's contracted for. I don't know if he's getting any offers from other clubs. I don't know if he's getting an extension offer from this club. I don't know, but I can't see another club stealing him off us at the end of the year or anything like that.
Yeah, I've said it before that he could potentially have, at the end of last year, gone for a year or two at the Eagles to help out their young midfield, which obviously I was probably the only person in Australia who thought that would be a good idea. But having said that, Tim Kelly sort of come good for them, and Elliot Yeo, our old mate, has come back from his injuries and he's become that big body guy in the midfield.
I think they'll be fine in a couple of years. They're all right. The building blocks are there for them.
Yeah, so it kind of panned out for them that they didn't end up needing, a couple of those older guys that potentially could have, who have been, fringe players for us or anywhere else. But so look, my thoughts are that what I said, I sort of stick by that. I feel like we could probably, and look, I like Jared. I've met him plenty of times. He's a good guy. Obviously loves the footy club, loves the boys, and they seem to love him. But you've got to be ruthless and you've got to be brutal when you're building a list to win a premiership.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think now, the inevitability of a national reserves competition is on the horizon. It's no more than 3 years away. Every club will have it. If that's going to go back to being a development league, as it was always intended to be when it was the reserves, keeping blokes like that around the club and offering them, clearly not the sort of money that you get as an AFL player, but have them as a senior VFL player. I think there's some value in that. Almost a bit Luke Hodge-like, only at a lower level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean.
Yeah, look, I don't hate that idea either.
Do you think it's inevitable that we'll have a full reserves comp in a couple of years? I know there's been a lot of talk about it in the last couple of years, but I haven't heard anything more concrete.
Well, there are now only 3 clubs that need to commit to it. So I think it's inevitable. And I don't know whether you know, Ella, but I did quite a bit of VFL broadcasting during the sort of the teens of the 2000s.
Yep.
Even back then, it was not if, it was when. The big question mark then becomes, so what happens to the Williamstowns and the Werribes and the Frankstons of the world? And
yes.
my fervent hope is that someone has enough brain cells to say, okay, we've got 6 really good clubs. Let's go and invite North Ballarat back, and let's go and invite Terrelgan back, and get a competition of 12 VFL teams, as in Victorian Football League teams, and start to rebuild something of what the VFA was.
Yeah, well, Casey would obviously go back to being Casey, and Sandringham back to being Sandringham.
Box Hill.
Or
Box Hill. So and then you've got Southport as well. Do they go back to the Quaff, or what happens with them? But I think so. Port Adelaide have pretty much made it clear that they want to be in international reserves comp and leave the SANFL.
Yep.
The Port Adelaide Magpies, that is, which are now part of the Port Adelaide Power, haven't always been. The word I hear from St Crows people is that they're pretty much teetering, waiting to see what happens, but they're in if it happens. But then you look over in the West, so Freo don't have technically a Fremantle reserves team. They have an aligned team in Peel Thunder.
Yep.
And the Eagles have a team that are no good, and nobody wants to play for them. So, they would have to obviously, though the WA teams are probably the stumbling block at the moment. They'd have to do some work, because the Eagles have only had a waffle team for 2 or so years. They were aligned with East Perth for a long time.
Oh, okay.
The Mighty Royals.
Yeah, we'll see. As a Mighty Royals supporter myself, that allowed me to see the great Chris Judd run around in the black and blue for the whole of one game. And I can claim
Nathan Buckley at Williamstown.
Yeah, and I can claim Polly Farmer and Kevin Murray as and Ross Glendinning as former players of my childhood club that I supported. So,
and the great Nick Robertson, who's still running around with them, wearing the number 18.
Yeah, still running around in their Scooby Doos. Not too many senior games for him these days. But they've actually just on a bit of a side note, the Mighty Royals, I think they've got about 8 guys in the state squad for their next State of Origin, or whatever you want to call it, game. So that's pretty good for them, for a team that finally made the finals last year after a while and had to send over medalist.
Yep.
And the send over medalist, Hamish Brayshaw, has been in the news a bit this week. I don't know if you guys have seen.
Yes.
No, I haven't seen it on this one. Would you care to explain?
So Hamish is the younger brother of Andrew and Angus.
Yes,
and
he was drafted by the West Coast Eagles, wasn't he?
Yeah, so he played one senior game for the Eagles in the middle of the COVID hub. He was just unlucky that, like a lot of guys, that he was on an AFL list as a fringe player when there was no reserves comp at all. But he got the one game. But look, he's sort of getting himself into the media a little bit now. Triple M, he's on a couple of podcasts as well, and he came out with an open letter during the week to the AFL about basically lampooning the way that they adjudicate the game, the way they adjudicate at the MRO and the tribunal. Some pretty passionate statements about his brother Angus never being able to play football again, and his brain's going to be no good for the rest of his life, and that sort of thing. And that's copping a lot of attention across the football media. Have not heard a single person disagree with anything he said to this date. And look, it's basically mostly centered around the way the AFL let some guys off for hitting blokes in the head and other guys because, they play for a certain team or they're in the middle of a finals campaign. Braden Maynard, I'm looking at you. It's okay to hit someone in the head and end their footballing career. So, I definitely recommend you look that up and have a bit of a listen. It's not...
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah, it'll be on the Fox Footy website and a few other places now. And I reckon, everyone listening would have heard it by now as well. So, yeah, and I mean, you kind of alluded to the Charlie Cameron thing, the way he got off at the tribunal, but he didn't go on a witch hunt like our friends at Fox Footy and The Age and a few other places have. So I
It's been a
appreciate.
shambles, hasn't it?
Oh.
The way they're just hounding poor Charlie.
Yeah. So, well, how much time have you got, Al?
Yeah, I should probably hop off soon. But
All right.
yeah, I'm just not feeling too long. I've got an early morning tomorrow morning.
Yeah, that's all right. I've already postponed my visit to the gym by an hour. Yeah. So, all right. Well, so we'll get into a new segment now, and it's something we've been trying to get up and running for a few weeks, and we weren't getting any bites, but now we have, and it's basically a bit of feedback and the like from our listeners and our followers on the socials, and giving it the very inventive and creative and totally original name of Al's Mailbag. So, Al, you get to provide any answers to any questions or make any commentary on any statements that anyone's made.
You've got mail.
Beautiful.
So we've had a few come in through the TikTok.
Okay, yep.
And this one's from a young fellow called Anthony. And he's basically said it's going to be a hard game next week for the boys. And hopefully we can work on it. I'm paraphrasing a little bit because it's spread across a couple of paragraphs. And he feels like the top 8 is getting away from us. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I agree with that. I mean, there's that old cliche of there's no easy games, and it's always got to focus on next week. But I think with the Suns game, they beat us last year, and they ended a really long winning streak of I think 8 in a row for us. And I don't think we really expected them to beat us, and we ended up having a fairly good year last year. Look, it wouldn't surprise me if this was a really tough game on Sunday night. It's there's an interesting stat that we haven't won in a home game at all this year, and the Suns haven't won an away game.
Yeah.
So one of us is going to have to break our season streak for one of those. So it'll be an interesting one.
There's a bit of hoodoo there. So I heard today on another podcast, and I cannot for the life of me remember which one. It was a couple of journos from an interstate newspaper basically saying that in recent history, turning into round 8, no team that had played in the grand final the year before had more than 4 wins at this stage of the season. And they were pointing out something that I've brought up a couple of times, and we've talked about a couple of times about how the shorter preseason does make teams start a little bit slower early on in the following season.
Yeah, and I think there's probably a bit of that too as well. I mean, I'm not really going to make a decision on the team until closer to the bye. We've got some winnable, what usually were winnable games coming up. This week and then the next 3 weeks. So it'll be interesting. It'll tell a lot about the team once that's all said and done in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so I agree. We need to see a bit more of a body of work. So this one also came in from TikTok, and this was sent through about a minute after the game against the Giants. And this person's profile is called Brisbane Lions, sorry, burner account.
Oh, okay.
That's a bit of an interesting name. And their question is...
This is your other account, isn't it?
No, mine's the Sam McClure burner account.
It's not Bernie account. It's not Mr. Quinlan, is it?
No, it's definitely not.
Just sure.
So on my Sam McClure burner account, I actually post things that are true.
And
just
to mix it up a bit.
And I don't even look at big footy before I write them. So Mr. Burner wants to know what the hell was that. They were actually at the game against the Giants, so they immediately after walking out of the stadium, they wanted our opinion on what the hell just happened, and they reckon it was a bit of a disgrace.
Oh, it definitely was a disgraceful match. They've come out and said so themselves. I mean, Fagan in his press conference wasn't being too kind about everything, and I've heard from a few players in the week during the week so far, and they've agreed that it was really bad performance. Like I was kidding Coleman. He was saying that he feels guilty because obviously he's missing games, and we started losing a lot of games after he got injured. I'm not sure if there's a connection there or not, but he was saying that he wishes he was back out there to help the boys.
Yeah, that'd be really, really hard for him.
Yeah, and it has been really. It was a really bad game. Our worst since at least, like what the Port game last year that you mentioned before.
Yeah.
Wasn't a lot of good things to say about that. No, not many silver linings.
So we've got another one from. So this fellow Rob Crawley follows us on both TikTok and Instagram. Seems like a pretty passionate fan, and he's asked us a question: where do you see this team in 10 weeks?
So 10 weeks from now, that's what, a couple of weeks after the bye.
Yeah.
We theoretically have Will Ashcroft back in the team.
Yep.
If that's not getting pushed back or whatever, we haven't really heard too much. But geez, he's going to be an exciting in. If he comes in and he plays, even 70% of what he was showing last year, I think that'd be a big morale boost to the team and also the fan base. So I think we'll probably be sitting just outside of the 8 in about 10 weeks. I don't think we'll completely fall off and go bottom 4, but I think we'll be chasing finals pretty hard for the rest of the season.
Yep, I agree with that. He also wants to know what's the possibility of us making the grand final still.
I'd say 5% chance.
Yep, that's
pretty unlikely to make the grand final.
Yeah,
I think we'll be chasing finals pretty hard for the rest of the year.
That's a pretty fair assessment considering our current position on the ladder. So this one's come from Facebook and it's from Jeff Mortimer, and he has referred to the last episode. And he says, I listened to most of Rusty's comment that was read out, and whilst there were some good points, I can't agree with the part about playing in torrential rain in the previous game as a reason for our lack of energy. Geelong played in the same game and somehow showed up against Carlton, who were not easy beats. So he just basically wants to know thoughts on that.
Well, I think playing in heavy rain like that definitely would have an impact on your performance and maybe even your mentality a bit as well. But I certainly don't think it's something that can be used as an excuse over multiple weeks, because it feels like we've been off for the whole season. I mean, we've had a couple of really good moments. The 2 wins that we had were pretty good, and we've had a couple of half good games so far. And then, second half, we usually just, last week, the second half was pretty rough. Second half against Fremantle was pretty rough. I don't know if I could use the weather as an excuse, but yeah.
Yeah, and the comparison.
Sorry, the interesting thing that came up during the week was last year Brisbane were ranked number 1 for the third quarter performance, as in differential. This year they're ranked 18th. I think there's your problem straight there.
Yeah.
Yes, the old premiership quarter. And the thing with Geelong too is that they had an extra 2 days to recover, and I mean they were playing Carlton, who I still don't rate. Maybe just because it's Carlton. But, yeah, they had an extra 2 days to recover than what we did. But no excuses there. I agree with that. And we got just a little message from our friend Deb, who's been on the show a couple of times now.
Oh, yeah.
And this is just after the game. She went to the game as well. And she just said that was hard to watch, especially live, and hopes we're taking some lessons from this and try for 4 quarters against the Suns this week. And a little addition to that was from Ray Milligan, who said, we need another 16 more guys of the same caliber as Zorko, who's not scared of the opposition when they come running at him full tilt.
Yeah, I agree with that. Right. I think we haven't really put in a 4-quarter performance at all this year, because even the game that we won against North, we got ahead and we kind of let them catch up a little bit. So, because I think they kicked a couple of late goals, didn't they?
Yeah. The junk time goals have been an issue for us for probably. I'm not going to. I reckon probably even before we started making finals. Unfortunately, So we got two more. So this one's from Facebook. This is from Carol. I think she's just making a statement. Probably doesn't need any response, but go for it if you need to.
Sure.
She's pretty angry. Sorry, but no more excuses of any kind. All the players need to get their act together and start playing the sort of football that us, the supporters, know that they can. No more reasons for or against. Just get out there and do it before your supporters leave you.
Yeah,
Well-
look, a bit dramatic at the end, perhaps, about supporters leaving. I don't think it's going to. Most serious fans, I don't think, are going to fall off even after, even if it gets to be a really bad year at the end of the year. I think most people will just put it up to, a bad year, and hopefully we bounce back. But yeah, geez, there is no excuses, and we can look at all the things that were wrong with the last few games, all the wasted shots on goals and things like that. But the toughest one for me was just visually you can see that the players don't look as invested as they were last year when they're playing games.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like the passion and the heat is there anymore. It just looks like they're just going out there because they have to go out there and they don't want to go out there. I'm not seeing the fire and the passion that I was seeing last year from the players. I haven't seen it at all this year.
So once again, I got suckered into listening to Ads and Dunks today at work. I actually had a workmate who's a Western Bulldogs supporter say, hey, you should listen to that Adam Treloar and Josh Dunkley podcast from this week because Josh Dunkley said a few things that you might be interested in. I'm like, oh, man, do I have to? Because Adam Treloar's got the personality of a plank of wood. Josh Dunkley's I love Josh Dunkley. I would dead set swap sides for him, but he's a bit vanilla. He's not an outrageous, outgoing sort of guy. But look, I love everything else about him. And he actually came on to their podcast and said, look, they had a truth-telling session where basically everyone sat down and they just told it like it was.
Right.
And very akin to what Geelong did at the end of 2006 before they came out and won a flag the next year, where in that instance it was Gary Ablett Jr. who copped a lot of flack from his teammates for having all the talent in the world and not making the most of it. And geez, didn't he prove everyone wrong after that? But yeah, and Harris Andrews as well. I noticed on one of the club's YouTube videos, he came out and said that they had a pretty harsh assessment of that game as well.
So, like, we're talking just directly last week's game? Like, they're referencing last week's
game?
Yeah,
they changed the way they review the games. So this week they changed the way they do it. They came out and they really sort of had a big heart-to-heart. Told a few truths to a few guys, said, listen, rather than saying, look, you're my mate, I'm going to back you, it's more like, this is what you're doing wrong. You need to work on this and get better at it. And then someone might say to that guy, well, you need to work on this. And it sort of went around the room a bit. So that's the impression I got from Dunkley anyway.
Okay. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. Look, I don't hate it.
Neil, what do you reckon about that?
I think it has to be done, but I think the thing that I'm finding disturbing from some of the comments we're hearing and also the stuff you read on social media is you get the sense that some supporters believe that these guys are not going out and giving it their all. Now, I know they're getting paid really good money, and I know that sometimes, it looks like the other side's quicker. That's often because the other side's quicker.
Yeah.
In my mind, I go back to a comment that was made to me by a former Geelong and Brisbane Bears and Brisbane Lions player, who I know quite well, who said to me, you know what the problem is? When I was playing, we do 8 proper pre-season games. These days we do 1.
Yeah.
And he said, we would not be hitting our straps till round 2. So what you're seeing is, and I put in a completely unrelated sports person, a bloke called Tiger Woods, who said once, there's very little difference between your best shot and my best shot. The difference is I do it all the time, you do it every now and again.
Yeah.
And I think that's the truth.
True.
Yeah, and I think that what we're seeing here is if you are a milli-thingo off your very best, whether that is you're tired or whether you haven't got the rhythm yet because the season hasn't been going long enough, it always appears that they're not trying. You know, do you honestly think that Eric Hipwood, who cops more flack than anybody I've ever remember, probably since Ash McGrath, who used to cop his fair share as well, do you honestly think Eric Hipwood goes back and thinks, I might kick a point now? He's trying his guts out. And the supporters who come along and have a crack at him, yeah, you know what, he's not performing like he did last year, but there's probably 50 players across the league who aren't playing as well as he did last year. There's a bloke who wears number 4 at Footscray who, you know, was going to win every Brownlow medal for the next 10 years. He doesn't seem to be setting the world on fire this year. There's a bloke called Dacos. In fact, there's 2 of them at Collingwood. They're not playing as well as they did last year. So why are we having a crack at our blokes?
Yeah, and that's something I'm going to bring up when we do a bit of a...
I'm getting off my soapbox now.
That's all right. I'm going to give you another opportunity because we will get to the media watching this. We've got one last letter that came through to us in young lady by the name of Andrea slid into our DMs on TikTok. This is for you, Al.
Okay.
Hello, I'm glad to meet you on TikTok. If you are a single man over the age of 35, I hope we can become friends. No, I'm just joking. I'm not going to read the rest of that out.
No, in fact,
I'm not over
it doesn't
35
matter if it's 35.
Yeah, you've got another 5 more birthdays to go.
I'm
mate.
ineligible. Damn.
Yeah. No, I just thought, you know, I wanted you to see what it was like to feel like being Sam Newman without all the racism and sexism and other stuff that he is known for.
Just the good stuff.
All right, so if you got time, Al, to stick around for just one more segment.
I could do one more segment and then I got to head off.
All right, so this one's creatively and originally named Media Watch. So I just want to bring up a couple of quick things and then I'll get to you, Al, and then Neil, you can jump in as well. So something I've noticed basically from the journalists this year, and this alludes a bit to what Neil just said as well, is the journalists whinging that Brisbane have a grand final hangover and haven't moved on from what happened in the grand final and they're hanging on to it for too long. But on the same token, the same guys are then whinging that Brisbane aren't hanging on to the loss for long enough and they're letting the loss drive them. Which one is it, guys?
Yeah. I was really surprised to see the hangover talk during the week.
Yeah.
Could you have a hangover for a lost grand final? Is that really a thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's bullshit.
Isn't the hangover supposed to be like, you know, you had the ultimate success and now you're just nonchalant because you've got it. Yes, you've already got you worked hard and you got the ultimate success thing that you wanted, you know, premiership. And then some guys tend to fall off the next year and they go, oh, we've already got it. We've already done the hard work.
Yeah.
But why would we be feeling like that if we didn't get it? Like we were close, but we didn't get it.
Well, that's it. And the only time I've ever had a hangover, that involved a hell of a lot of tequila.
And it had nothing to do with the premiership.
No. And I'm pretty sure I swallowed the worm as well. So another thing, and this is not Brisbane related, but they've brought up this issue with Sydney Swans player Sam Wicks, where he kicked a goal right towards the end of their game against the Hawks last week. They were 10 goals up. The game was like the siren was imminent, and none of his mates come over to high five him. Now, he kicked a goal earlier in the game, and 20 blokes jumped all over him. I'm pretty sure blokes came in off the bench and from in the crowd and jumped over him, but the media's not mentioning that. All they're talking about is, there's a problem at Sydney because Sam Wicks didn't get a high five with less than a minute to go when they were 10 goals up. Like, seriously, media guys, come up with something worthwhile and get off this all the sensationalising of Sydney and Brisbane at the moment that you're doing. All right, it's bullshit. And that brings me to my last one. Yahoo Sport Australia's Facebook page, probably all their other socials. I didn't even know Yahoo was still a thing until they started popping up on my feed where every single thing that they put on there is this sensationalist headline where it's like, teammates are despising this guy on their team and you won't believe what happened next. Or,
you got to click on that to find out. You gotta know what happened.
And then you click on it and it's like, and it was like the Sam Wicks thing, or, Lockie Neal's wife is disgusted with something he did. And then you read the article and it's like, she says, no, we're pretty solid. Everything's good. We got no issues. And like, I mean, I don't know why I don't just block them, but
yeah,
all right. What you say. Anyway, that's my high horse. You guys got anything?
Not media related, no.
No, Neil?
I just go back to the great Richie Benaud. And Richie Benaud had a saying that as a broadcaster, I absolutely agree with, and that is, if it adds no value to the broadcast, don't say it. And I'm looking at you, Brayshaw. I'm looking at you, Taylor. I'm looking at you, Hudson, Howard, and all these other people who seem to think that we only have the football so they can be on TV. The absurdity.
Yes.
Radio presenters being filmed, and then on Facebook on Monday, have a look at the reaction to Jamie Elliott's mark. You know what? I might actually enjoy watching Jamie Elliott's mark. I don't need to see contrived crap being done by radio and television broadcasters so that they can be on Facebook on it. I go back, I think we mentioned it last time I was on, there's a bloke called Bruce Andrew who used to be on World of Sport. He was an ex-Collingwood player who had the most magnificent part you have ever seen down the middle of his hair. And he would come on a Sunday with his best three-piece suit on, and he would talk about the football. That's what we want. We don't need these has-been footballers or wish they were commentators utilising my social media for their own personal gratification. Wow.
I agree.
100%. And,
that, go on.
Bit of a controversy too with Luke Darcy commentating on his own son the other night, making a few personal observations, and Brian Taylor and James Brayshaw, my two favourite commentators. In fact, there's my three favourite commentators. Note the sarcasm in my voice. And they're over commentating of young Jake Kelly in the Anzac Day game between Collingwood and Essendon. And as it turns out, Jake Kelly's father, Craig, is a very, very good, close personal friend of both of those guys. Where they were talking him up at one stage as being a potential winning the Anzac medal when he'd only had one kick for the game at that point. Neil, I thought Mark Howard would have been a mate of yours, being from down on our lovely part of the world.
No mate of mine. If ever there has been a person who has put himself front and centre based on a complete lack of football ability, I don't think he's even going to get a game at Barwon Heads in the Ballerine League, to be honest.
Well, he does play cricket for the Barwon Heads Thirds, and I would say he's okay. That's about the best I can say.
Yes, I played cricket against Tony Jones once upon a time in the Veterans League in Melbourne, and if ever there was evidence that you don't need to be able to play a game to be able to report on it, there's your man.
Yeah, well, Bob Hawke was probably an interesting example of a cricketer, wasn't he?
And John Howard.
Oh, Johnny Howard, yeah. All right, Al, so if you got to go, I'll grab your tip and prediction for our game then.
Yep, yeah, I'll jump out. So I'm going to go with, I tipped a loss last week, but I tipped a much closer loss. I'm going to tip a win this week, whereas everything up till about tonight, I was thinking we're probably going to lose, but I've changed my mind, and I think we're going to win this one. I think the boys will rally, and I think it'll be a 4-goal win, approximately.
Yep. Any players you think might get up to anything good?
I can just, I can call it the obvious one and say Brian Lester and Harris Andrews are probably going to have a good game because they always usually pretty reliable. But I'm going to go with Bruce Reville's going to kick his first goal as well.
And all the boys are going to high-five him.
And they're not going to forget to high-five and get around him.
Yeah, like they did with Kyle Lehman.
Yes. But I reckon he's going to kick his first goal in his first game.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with any of what you've just said. All right, well, we'll let you go and we'll continue. There's only a couple little things left to go now.
No worries. You'll be able to stitch me my little prediction in at the end when you guys do yours, I guess.
We'll just leave it in where it is.
We'll just stick you up. That's what we'll do. You're not here. You defend yourself. No, you want to make sure the last bit.
You know what? We're at the point of the episode where I've just been thinking, there's nothing I've said that I actually have to edit out this week. Probably a couple of things that I can use to make little grabs for our TikTok or our Instagram. But yeah, all right. Well, mate, go look after yourself. Get some rest and enjoy your morning, whatever it is you're doing. And we'll talk to you on Monday.
Beauty, guys. I'll talk to you next week. I'll talk to you probably around the game as well.
Yeah. Too easy.
Beauty.
All right.
See you, Neil.
On you, mate.
Cheers.
See you, mate.
Yeah. All right, so that's just us two left now. So this is another, we've only sort of been doing this for a couple of weeks. It's the weird stat of the week, and it's just something unusual that happens quite a lot in the 1 week. Usually we've been predicting it, but last week we didn't, and I picked up on one. It was, well, there's two. Firstly, the use of the word dukes or jukes, however you like to say it. I didn't know that was a thing in football commentary, but it was used in reference to people using their hands quite a lot last week in the 2 Anzac Day games. I only watched one other game aside from that, and that was the Geelong Carlton game, which I had to mute the sound because it was just Anthony Hudson barracking loudly for Carlton, strangely. But so back to the weird stat, though. Jack Buckley's 50th game, which was against us, I watched the game back and I counted 13 times that the same commentator mentioned it in the one game. Like the 1 or 2 times, yeah, fair enough. We just needed a bit of a reminder. But I think by about the 4th time, everybody in Australia knew that Jack Buckley was playing his 50th game. So
yeah, the other one that was very similar was the bloke with the helmet at whatever his name was. He was a debutant apparently.
Darcy Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like actually that reminds me. So I was thinking about this during the week back a few years back when Big O was sort of really hitting his straps, becoming one of the premier ruckmen in the comp, no matter what the media tries to tell us. Every team we played every week seemed to debut or bring back an aggressive ruck forward to try and rough him up. Whereas this year, every team we've played has brought back a speedy or given a debut to a speedy, dynamic, sort of looking, unusual appearing small forward. We had Sam Switkowski came back into the Freo side against us earlier in the year, did some pretty good things. Unfortunately, didn't finish the game out. We had Darcy Jones against the Giants. We had Thrill House, whatever his name is, that plays for Melbourne with the curly mullet that made his debut, replacing Cosy Pickett. And there's been 1 or 2 others. Lockie Schultz, I guess for Collingwood, although he didn't. I don't even know if he turned up to that game. It's a shame because he was my favourite player from another club before he went to Collingwood.
Well, we're actually recording this at the same time as the Carlton and Collingwood game is going on. I wonder how many times the informative commentary team have told us that Lockie Sullivan is the mature age recruit from the VFL.
And the perpetual big-bodied midfielder.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. They'll be having a that I would have thought.
That sort of gets a run every now and then still. So currently Collingwood are 52, Carlton 41. 6.5 minutes remaining in the third. Seems like an enthralling game to be watching, which I'm not. Yeah. So, next up, I'm just going to get into an update on Will Ashcroft. The club have been putting up a few little snippets of him doing some training now, letting us know that he's not too far away. There was a report out of Western Australia this week that they thought that he was getting selected this week. Now, Lee Spur, former Freo docker who's in the media over there, has pretty close ties with a couple of our guys, Chris Fagan, Lockie Neal, and one or two others. And he seems to leak a lot of this stuff about our club, but none of it ever seems accurate. So, I mean, he leaked that Alistair Clarkson was going to be our coach this year. And also, yeah, obviously that Will Ashcroft was going to be back this week. But look, Will can't be too far away, as Al said, probably just after the bye. That would be the sensible time to bring him back. But it's good to see him on the training track doing almost regular training now. So that's good. Hugh McCluggage's contract situation, a lot of people anxious saying, why hasn't he signed yet? Hugh never signs anything until after the last game's played. It's traditionally the way he's done it. So I'm not too fussed. The media reporting that several clubs are offering him in excess of $1 million a season over long terms. I think he stays, and I think $950 over 6 years gets it done to stay. What are your thoughts?
I think he'll stay, and I think they'll do what they need to do. I think the other one that's sitting in the background is Jared Berry, and I think you might find there's a package deal done there that the both of them stay.
Yeah, look, I mentioned to Alan a message the other day that I heard some rumours that North Melbourne had an interest in Jared Berry, as similar to what I was saying about Jared Lyons before, because they really need some big bodies in their midfield. I mean, the other thing too, like their captain, Jai Simpkin, another sort of localish boy to us, from down the road in Colac, he's their captain, and he's generally been an inside midfield player, struggling to get into that midfield at the moment. So they're obviously Clarkson's preferring the younger guys, but they're getting beaten up every week. So look, there could be something in that. And I mean, I've said it a million times, if you're a list manager and a guy's coming out of contract and if you're not talking to him, you're not doing your job.
I think the only way I could see Jared Berry coming back to Victoria in the next 5 years is if there was a package deal with Tom.
Yeah, possibly.
While Tom's living in Queensland, I think Jared will be in Queensland. I think that because of the family situation, I don't think he would come back to Melbourne happily without his brother.
Yeah, the other thing is too, like, who was it during the week? So I heard an interview with Josh Tracy from the Dockers during the week, and they were asking him about if he was had any interest in going back to Melbourne, and he pointed out, well, actually, I'm not from Melbourne. I'm from the country. I'm from up on the border. So I have
the town of Kahuna.
Kahuna, yeah. And ironically, his nickname is the Big Kahuna.
For the reason being that he comes from Kahuna.
And he's also big.
Yeah.
And a Kahuna. But yeah, and that's the same thing I feel with Jared Berry. He's not a Melbourne boy. He, you know, like Horsham's a long way from Melbourne. It's like 3.5, 4 hours away. So, you know, the draw of, and that's probably why a few of the guys like Berry, McCluggage and so forth were more attractive to the club at the time. Alex Witherden, when he was drafted as well, because the country boys are not from Melbourne. Yeah, Tom Rockcliffe, sort of much earlier sort of period though, but the country boys may be a little less likely to say, I need to get back to all my private school mates and my Sorrento, Port C social life.
Yep.
Because that's not where I'm from.
Yep, absolutely agree.
All right, so I'm going to try and play something through my phone, if I've still got it on there.
You're listening to We Are the Pride, the podcast put together by Ash and Al. We take a small break at the moment while Ash finds something on his phone.
Yeah, look, how's technology in this day and age? We need that We'll Be Right Back music that KO has. All right, so this is Will Schofield on the Shelter Footy Cast with Mark Reddings, also known as Skeeter. Interesting nickname over in WA, talking about the Brisbane Lions.
This top 8, are we saying? I don't think the top 6 changes at all.
No, agree.
I have Essendon, Fremantle as should play finals, but not locks.
No,
and beneath them, I have Collingwood.
Yeah, they're the only team that I can see. I mean, Brisbane had the talent, but they're now 2 games outside the top 8. And at some stage, the ladder doesn't lie with regards to what teams are producing. The Brisbane Lions haven't won at home this year. They've got the Gold Coast Suns at the Gabba this weekend. But it's the Dockers and Essendon. They're the two. Essendon, well, they're going to surprise us all if they keep playing this. They'll play finals if they continue to show us what they have in the first 7 rounds. Collingwood's the only team for mine that can jump up and disrupt.
That's Mike Redding
one of those
speaking at the moment.
inside the 8.
Mm-hmm.
I think Brisbane play finals. So they just lost to GWS poorly, right? GWS we have as a top 2 side, or I have as a top 2 side. Week before they lost to Geelong, undefeated. They beat Melbourne the week before, who we have as a very good side. The week before that, they smacked North Melbourne, move on. The week before that, they got beaten by Collingwood in the grand final replay. The week before that, they had a bye, so they didn't win that one. And the week before that, they were beaten by Freo here at Optus Stadium. I think that's a very difficult start to the season. And they lost by a point to Carlton opening round.
Oh, look, I don't disagree with that.
So I have them better than their ladder position, and I say Brisbane play finals. What you say, you?
No, I think it's going to be really tough from here. As I said, there's probably only one team. You think there's going to be 2 changes, or one with Collingwood jumping up and Brisbane, or just Brisbane?
Essendon will drop out, and apparently Freo will drop out after I think the top 6 won't change.
Okay,
that's disappointing to hear. I know, for Freo fans.
I think just on the Brisbane,
been wrong a lot. So.
They've won 2 from 7. My maths isn't great, but they've got to win probably 10 or 11 of their remaining games, which, gee, there's not much room for error there.
Yeah, I reckon they'll do the GWS from last year and sort of get on a run. GWS had that big run late and made the finals late, and I think they'll do similar areas, finish sort of 8th or 7th.
I'm not convinced, but that's not the first time we've disagreed.
Very good, Skeeter. Let's move on. Will Schofield.
All right. So how clear did that come through?
Pretty good. Yeah.
That's good. So any thoughts on what Will had to say? I'm not too fussed on Skeeter. Obviously, he's not on us.
I mentioned earlier in the episode that we were 4 and 5 in 2001. We beat Gold Coast, and I think is it Richmond or Hawthorn the following week? Maybe it's St Kilda.
Yeah, no, it's Hawthorn and then Richmond and then Adelaide, I believe.
So if we win those 2, we're at 4 and 5.
Yeah.
The other thing I don't think is being spoken about, and sure, I'd much rather we sit where Geelong is. I get that, but if you think about it, if you get to the finals and you sneak into 7th or 8th from here, they're going to be on a roll. They will have beaten teams that they're competing with, and they'll be on a roll. And this bollocks that the press keep putting up about the fact that we can't play anywhere else, just bring up Melbourne and see how they went last time they played Brisbane at the MCG. Yeah. I don't have a problem with that. When it gets to finals, it's a whole new ball game. So I'm still very confident that we can make it and make inroads.
Well, Melbourne's last 3 games against us at the MCG was a loss, 1 point win and a loss.
Yeah. So that doesn't worry us anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So, but Will Schofield again, they had another episode that came out overnight where he was pretty upbeat about us. Reckons we're going to win our next 6 games in a row.
So if we win 6 in a row, that makes us 8 and 5.
Yeah. And you know what? We lost 7 games last year. So, I mean, we could be in pretty much a similar. And you remember we lost the 2 games either side of the bye to have us at like 5 or 6 losses for the year by that stage. I think we only lost the 1 more game for the year against the Suns, wasn't
it? Yeah. No point throwing the toys out just yet.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will get into the most important part. We'll get just while you cough up a lung there silently.
Yeah.
So we'll get into the tips and predictions for our game, and then I'm going to just quickly run through the rest of the games and get your tips on those as well. Obviously, not the 2 games that have already been played, but we'll start with our game first.
On those.
Well, I can tell you that Adelaide should win the showdown.
I think they're a very, very good chance to do that.
And I reckon the other game is going to be a close one, but Collingwood will be leading late in the 3rd quarter.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you on those 2. Beyond that, it starts to get a bit more difficult.
Yeah, so with our game, what are your thoughts there?
I think they will win. I think Brisbane will win. If they don't win, it's not the end of the season. But as far as the AFL media is concerned, the weight upon which they will throw at the club, the coach has to go, it has to be dropped, all the sort of crap that they normally dish up. I think that they will win, and they will win comfortably. I think it'll be a 5-goal plus win. I think the player that will be the difference is a chap called Cameron Rayner. I think he will step up to the plate and do the sorts of things he did against Melbourne. And I'm also tipping that one of the three main forwards, Cameron or Hipwood or Danaher, will kick 5.
Oh, sorry about that. It's going down some water.
That'll teach you.
I thought you were going to talk for a little bit longer. Yeah, look, I tend to agree. I think we win by 50 plus. I tend to agree with the Rayner assessment. This is the sort of game. It seems to be like those Cage Tiger games is when Rayner does come out and do something.
Yep.
And really sort of comes out of his shell. And again, that also has a bit to do with coaches putting him where he needs to be.
Yes.
And not putting him in cotton wool in the forward line and saying, you're a big boy, get into midfield, attend every centre bounce you can possibly attend and smash those packs. I think Charlie Cameron kicks 5, possibly more, but I'm going to conservatively say 5.
Yep.
And my prediction for the medal is going to be Rayner.
Yep, no, I'm happy with that.
Yep. And I must say my track record this year hasn't been great. I was pretty close, actually. I said 4 goals against Melbourne, and what did we win by 22 points? So, yeah, pretty close there. All right, so let's just quickly run through the rest of the games, and then we'll finish up. So, Sydney and the Giants at the SCG.
Well, I haven't seen the selected sides, but I'm assuming that Toby Green and Sam Taylor come into the Giants side, and they're 2 fairly handy players. I have been hitting that by 3 goals.
Yeah, so Taylor was used in some of the pre-match media promos, so I'm assuming he's playing. He came out and called the Swans a bunch of grubs. Look, I think the Swans get it done by 7.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got a medal. So apparently Luke Parker's won the Brett Kirk medal. Didn't even know it existed until today, 5 times. I think Errol Gordon gets that. Go on out on a limb there. St Kilda and North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium. We're both probably going to say St Kilda on that one, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, North will get up and beat somebody.
Yeah.
They go through the season Zippo, but I don't think it'll be this week.
Well, I'm going to out myself here. Except for when they played us, I've tipped North into tipping every game.
Right.
Because, and this logic is sort of going to apply to the following game, but eventually North's going to win one and I'm going to get it right and I'm going to gloat about it to everyone. So the next one is at the MCG, Melbourne versus Geelong.
Yeah, I've gone with Geelong there.
I've gone with Melbourne based on the opposite of the North logic because I think eventually Geelong's going to lose one.
Yep, I suppose. Yep.
I have no reason to back Melbourne otherwise because I don't think they're as good as what they should be. And I think Clayton Oliver's cooked and he's nowhere near where he needs to be.
Yep.
This is probably going to be a better game than what the ladder positions suggest. Eagles and Essendon at Optus Stadium.
Yeah, I'm running with Essendon even though it's over there. I think West Coast have improved since last year, but I think Essendon are on a bit of a flyer at the minute.
Yeah, Harley Reid back for the Eagles. Jeremy McGovern in pretty good form. I don't know if he's in the team or not. Like you, I haven't seen their selected teams. Essendon definitely on a bit of a flyer, but I think there were some signs after quarter time in the Anzac game that suggests to me that they might have heavy legs. And I think the Eagles are going to sneak one in here.
They do have 9-day turnaround, though.
Yeah, but Essendon have been up for a while too, and I just think that the big travel to the other side of the country, and yeah, if you're an Essendon supporter, not that any of them are going to be listening, but you can say, well, you know, we travelled the other side of the country and we lose by a goal or whatever. Next, we'll be at the MCG or Marvel and we'll win that. So Sunday, Richmond and Freo at the MCG.
I have Fremantle winning that.
Yeah, I They've already won at the MCG this year, haven't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think they win it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Richmond sneaks one there.
Been on every one of them so far, which is good.
Yeah, which is good. Western Bulldogs and Hawthorn at Marvel Stadium. I didn't realise the Bulldogs were down in 11th. I thought they might have been about 9th or 8th, but yeah, because they always. Sorry, go on.
I got the Bulldogs winning that pretty comfortably, I think.
Yeah, I think Adam Treloar gets 40 and Jamara Ugelhagen, who I believe is back, kicks 4 minimum.
Yep.
I can't see Hawthorn getting within 8 goals. And we've already tipped the other games. So, yeah, I guess, is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
No, I think we've done well. In fact, we'll probably talk long with me need to, but that's okay. I will no doubt pop up again later in the season. Thanks for inviting.
No worries. Thanks for coming on again. And Al was looking forward to getting on and spending some time with you as well. He did mention that in our previous episode as well. So we may have a big bash at the last game of the season and get all of our guests on in the one night. In the one big Zoom chat. So
that'll be fun.
Yeah, that'll be very interesting.
All right. All the best.
Thanks, Neil. Have a good one. And hopefully the Lions get up for us.
You'd hope so.
All right. Good on you, mate. Cheers.
Cheers.
See ya.